Today's guest is someone whose work you've experienced, even though you may not know his name. He's helped shape how cities move, how ports function, how airports grow, and how global commerce flows. From Miami to Latin America and beyond, his fingertips are on the infrastructure that millions of people rely on every single day. This is a Game Changers conversation in the truest sense of the word. I'm honored to welcome Willy Bermello to Game Changers. Welcome to Game Changers, coming to you from our podcast studio here on the campus of Florida International University's College of Communications, Architecture, and the Arts. And today I have a very special guest, and the fact that we are here at the School of Architecture at FIU, it's completely fitting to have my guest, Willy Bermello. He is the principal and vice president of Bermello, Ajamil Partners, a global and award-winning architecture and engineering design firm spanning over 30 years. And if you've traveled in South Florida at all, which everybody has, whether you're at an airport or a seaport or wherever you're going, you have likely been touched by this firm's influence, right? So welcome, Willy, to Game
Sergio,
Changers.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here at Game Changers with all of your audience and back here at FIU at the home of the Panthers.
That's right. That's right. Pause up for that one. We gotta give Jeanette Nunez a pause up here. As he go like this. Pause up.
She's doing a great job, huh?
So, Willy, you were born in Cuba. You went to UF. You did your master's degree at University of Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
As a child growing up, what influenced you to take on this interest in architecture?
Well, my dad would take me on weekends to learn how to drive, and he would take me to these new developments and subdivisions. And what was interesting about the subdivisions was that I was seeing the newest modernism in Cuba happening in Havana in the late 1950s. And it drew a lot of interest to me as a kid. And I had an ability to draw. And when they would ask me what I wanted to be, I would tell my grandfather and my aunts and my uncles, I want to be an architect. And it just so happens that at that time, Cuba had an excellent school of architecture, and some of the modernist movements of the international style had really taken place and was really moving forward with Cuban architecture. And we had a lot of influence from Europe. Jose Luis Sert, Walter Gropius were all common visitors to the island, and Cuba really was on the vanguard of architecture, in the early 1960s,
right.
Basically in the 1950s. So that was a great influence on me, and since I was a little kid, I just enjoyed it. I had a talent for drawing, and I was very focused. I never diverted from that. People would ask me, what do you want to be? I said, I want to be an architect.
You knew from the start.
I knew it from the start.
Interesting. And so you came over when?
We came to Miami. You always remember the day that you arrive in Miami.
Right.
And we arrived here on October 22nd, 1960. I was 9 years old. We came here with $5 in our pockets. This is not a figurative speech. It was
literally $5.
It was literally $5 for my mother, my dad, and myself. So we had $15 between the three of us. And we went straight from the airport to a little hotel where my father used to stay during times that we would come here, normal times in vacation, not in times of exile. It's called the Short Crest Hotel. It's on 15th and Collins. And we stayed there for a week until a family that the gentleman was an executive from Standard Oil Company in Havana. And when he arrived here, the company obviously treated him well and provided for him. So he had money enough to pay our bill so we could leave the hotel because we had been there for an entire week, just cranking up a bill. And then we lived in North Miami and Normandy Island, which is like North 79th Street Causeway area. We lived there for about a whole month in a small, I would call it a motel. It was a one-bedroom efficiency at the Sir Richard's Hotel in Normandy Island, We were there for about a month. And then my dad started working for the CIA, and we moved into a little house just behind Riverside Elementary School in La Sahuesera, right in the heart of Little Havana, and we were there for a couple of years.
Wow! So the CIA, and how did he land that? Was he involved in similar work in Cuba?
Well, my father, when we came to Miami, he had been a magistrate in the government of Castro during that year. All of the magistrates left the island once they realized the big lie of the promise of the revolution was not what people thought it was going to be, and it was going to be a Marxist-Leninist movement. And so when he came to the U.S., he immediately was recruited, and my father was at an age that he was not operating in the clandestine operations, but what my father and a group of other 4 men did is that they ran the back of house for the CIA. So all the different companies, all the accounting, all the support was done out of a little office and on Southwest A Street and about 45th Avenue.
Wow.
And I would go there as a kid. When I was at middle school, I attended Kinloch Park Middle School, and right after school, one of the gentlemen that worked there, who was like a runner, he would come pick me up and he would go there. So I'd be there in the office, and they were all working, and I had no idea what they were doing. Well, what they were doing is they were taking care at that point of the widows and the wives of the men of the Bedo pigs that were at that time in prison in 1961. So, and my father worked for the company for about 5-6 years, and then he went into the publication business.
Wow, what a story! I mean,
it was an interesting story.
Absolutely. So, all right. So you go to UF, you finish your master's degree, and at what point? What do you do after Pennsylvania?
So I'm at Penn. I graduated in 1973 from Florida, magna cum laude. I had. And when I graduated from Florida, I went to Florida with the Cuban loan program, which was available at the time for students that needed assistance, and I needed assistance. My parents were not that well off, so the Cuban loan program came in very handy. We paid it back. We did not depend on the Biden administration to give me a handout. We actually paid everything back. And when I graduated from Florida, I applied to all of the Ivy League schools, Harvard, Cornell, Princeton, Penn, and they all accepted me, but Penn was different. Penn gave me stipend, tuition. They opened the wallet, and it was hard to say no to all the money that they presented. So I went to Penn. I was there for 2 years and got a double master's in city planning and a master's in architecture. So I end my second year. And I've always been very competitive, and the competition I adored my dad, but I was always very competitive with him. And my father had a doctorate in commercial science, so it was Dr. Guillermo Bermello. So I always wanted to have also the DR in front of me, Doctor. So I applied to the MIT doctoral program, and I was accepted. And I'll never forget this. It was the spring of 1975, and I tell my wife, listen, I'm just going to go up to Boston. I'm going to go meet with the chair, etc. And I guess I've just been accepted. She was very happy. And so I get there, and I go in the building, and I walk around the main floor, and I see that all the doctoral candidates, they're all writing books. They're doing research, right? Which, was maybe naive of me, thinking that they were going to be involved in more exciting things. And after I did my little tour, self-guided tour, at that time there were no iPhones. So I find the first phone booth. I put a dime and I call my wife. And I said, honey, pack our bags. We're going to Miami.
We're leaving. Yeah.
She said, what happened? Well, what happened is I want to be building stuff. I don't want to be writing books. There's always time to write books when I'm older. Right now, I want to build. And that was the end of my stint at MIT. And we came back to Miami, and we it was really, and there's not coincidences in life. It was something that was just God given. I had a professor by the name of George Wallace, and Dr. Wallace was the founder of WMRT, which was the premier planning firm in the country at the time. And they had just gotten a big contract to do the Miami Neighborhood Comprehensive Development Plan in 1975. It was going to be a 25-year plan up to the year 2000. And they hired me, and I came down, so I came with a great job, great company, working in the Grove, and it was, it was like a storybook ending to my graduate program at Penn.
Right. So you went from being an architect by trade into the development world. How was that transition, and how are you able to then?
So in a sense, actually, the first work that I did in Miami was planning related, which was great because it gave me a great feel for the overall community. I studied the entire city of Miami and the surrounding communities, and that gave me tremendous exposure. Gave me great exposure to our elected officials and our planning department, our building departments, going to city commission hearings. Had I been working as an architect, probably be doing some drafting in an office and not getting a broad exposure. But that gave me, over 2 years, I really knew the entire city. I knew that Miami River, I had gone it up and down twice. Things that normally people would not experience, I had experienced it. So it gave me a tremendous backdrop. And then in 1970, at the end of 1976, starting in 1977, I joined the firm that I used to be a draftman during my college years when I would come home during the holidays. And I joined them as not an intern, but as a recent graduate, and I became then a junior partner in that company. That company became the company that I later founded.
Wow, interesting.
Because it evolved through partnerships. I started buying people out, and before I knew it, I owned the company, and then I took new partners in.
That's incredible. So you have a curiosity. You expose yourself into different facets of the development space because, like you said, it's not just architecture. A lot of people just pigeonhole themselves into one thing and they're not seeing the big picture. One of the things that I always ask our guests is, what's more important to your success? Net worth or network?
Well, I would tell you this. My net worth was zero. So I had I been in Cuba, it might have been a different situation. But here, there was no silver. There was no zero, silver spoon. Our spoon was a plastic spoon, disposable plastic spoon. That was not in the cards for me. I didn't. My parents did not give me a Porsche when I graduated.
Right.
That was not in the cards for me. So for me, it became that. That formative years of working for the city of Miami through this planning company, visiting all of our neighborhoods, listening to people like, at that time, Sergio Pereira, who was working for the community development. We later became great friends, member of the Kiwanis. He then became a county manager. It gave me so many touch points. I met so many people because I would make presentations in community meetings, in public hearings. And before I knew it, I was developing relationships at a rate for someone of my age that was totally unknown for.
Right.
So I would tell you that other than Almighty God blessing me along the way, it was the relationships, more than the talent, more than the net worth. And then I would say the relationships and a total commitment just for work, just for hard work, a tremendous ethic. So that and maintaining a level of integrity with everything that I did ethically, that would leave a mark with people that I would meet along the journey.
Right, that they can count on you, and you're more than just work. You're about family, you're about relationships, you have your faith. You had a tremendous civic impact over the last 30 years in South Florida. A lot of people may not know this, but so you helped. You were a co-founder of the Coral Gables Community Foundation. You were president of the chamber. You were co-founder of the Kiwanis, the Calle Ocho Festival. You helped bring the Grand Prix of Miami, which I am a massive Formula One fan, so that's something we need to talk about offline. A number of organizations that you've worked with, public and private, and you're also a pastor at Alpha and Omega. And so you obviously have this tremendous commitment to the civic side of things, because you could just get completely focused in on work, make lots of money, make lots of deals, right? But at the end of the day, that's not the legacy you necessarily want to leave behind. It's the impact you've had on people. So tell me about what drove that desire to be so civically engaged.
It's hard for me to tell you how it all evolved, how the dots started to connect. I got a great deal of pleasure by seeing how one person can change someone's lives by things that sometimes you don't even know how that is really helping. And what happens is that when you do something and people benefit from, and there are people that are standing on the sidelines, you immediately get recruited by those that are observing and drawing an opinion of you, and then thinking, well, this person can really help us here. And it's been like one after the other. So about 15 years ago, as an example, I had a friend of mine, Bedo, contractor, who one day said, can you join me for breakfast? I have a group that I would like for you to meet, and I think you're the person that could help them. Introductions like that, for me, are very commonplace. And the persons that they were introducing me to was Claudio Perez and Dr. Jose Hernandez, who are the leaders of the Agape, which is a faith-based non-for-profit that is based in South Dade, and they rescue women that have been victims of domestic violence, human trafficking, substance abuse. They also have like a diversionary program for the jail system, and an area that I had never been involved in. Right. And I met with them. I went and visited, and once I visited and saw and heard from the women and their plight and what they were going through, it just touched me. And I said, this is something that I may be able to help you. They wanted to expand their program. They wanted to take it to a different level. They didn't have any money. And I said, well, maybe we can do something here that might be special. We founded a foundation that I chaired it. I still share it. I want to retire now. We raised $35 million and built them a new campus.
Wow.
With the help from federal government, state government, local government, and Baptist Hospital, and also the generosity of the Jose Milton family. So those things for me happen all the time. I just happen to be helping someone, and someone comes by and says, can you help us here? Yeah. So I go from helping someone here to helping someone there. Right. And I enjoy that. I enjoy that as much as the architectural side of creating monuments and iconic buildings that bring some joy, that bring some pride, that emotional side of being happy that you live in Miami and not maybe in Peoria, Illinois. Nothing against Illinois. But I think the helping people is something that I have enjoyed, and I see that also at church, where I try to touch people and help them and guide them, transform their lives. So that for me is a high. It's, for some people it may be different things. For me, that knowing that someone's lives was transformed, they went to a different level than where they were at, that gives me a lot of pleasure.
And you never know what someone's going through, like you said, and just a word of support could absolutely transform their day. A lot of people are struggling out there, whether it's financially, with addiction, with anxiety, with cancers, a number of things. And being in a position where you can impact them, not only from an emotional state, but also financially, helping create the structure, that infrastructure to support them is an incredible thing. You build these large-scale public-private projects that leave a legacy, physical, right? That you can see, you can touch, tangible. From the ministry side, you're working with things that you can't see, right? The soul, right? The emotions and things like that. And so tell me about your time in ministry and as a pastor, and what has been, some of the most incredible moments for you in terms of what you've gotten from it.
Oh, there was one moment that for me was very interesting. We ran a program for 5 years. So I lead the business ministry at Alpha and Omega Church, where I'm an associate pastor. And about 5 years, actually maybe 7 years ago, we started a program working together with FIU. I don't know if you're aware of this, the Small Business Development Center that's run out of the business school here at FIU and Alpha and Omega. We did a joint venture, and we would do monthly workshops at Alpha and Omega where we would bring some of the faculty members in the business school to teach basically business principles, how to prepare a business plan, how to market, how to maintain your cash flow, how to start a company, all those things that are important for a small business.
Sure.
And we did this for about 5 years, every month. We must have touched, I have to tell you, over 3,000 business people in those 5 years, people that would come in. And there was one day that I'm there, and I was a facilitator. So there would always be one or two persons from FIU, which were the subject matter experts.
Sure.
And by the way, they did a great job. And they would present, and there would be questions from the public, et cetera. And at the end, I would always have people raise their hands. And this lady, she raises her hand, and I said, "Yes, who are you?" And she says, "Well, I have to come to the front." "Yes, please come to the front." She comes to the front, and she gives me a hug. She starts to cry. I get emotional. I said, "Tell me, what's wrong?" And she says, "I heard you on the radio with Pastor Legado. I don't come to this church, but I heard what you were saying about the program that you have at FIU, so I have been attending. And 3 months ago, after one of your workshops, I came afterwards and I talked to the gentleman at FIU, and they assisted me getting a $25,000 loan." And I said, "Well, what did you do with your loan?" "I bought a food truck. I specialize doing lemonades. And my food truck and my business has been doing so well selling lemonade in the Wynwood area that I am now going to buy my second truck." Now,
That's phenomenal.
to me, that was like, wow.
Yeah, it's life-changing for that
Over
person.
the top. This is a lady, probably single head of household, minority. I don't know where she came from, maybe Salvador, Nicaraguan. She wasn't Cuban, she wasn't Venezuelan. She was, you could tell that she did not have a lot of means. But here's someone that listened to me on the radio, came to our program with FIU, got some assistance, got some guidance, got a loan, and all of a sudden she's an entrepreneur, making money, increasing her volume of sales. I said, wow, can you imagine? So, I tell people, sometimes it's just one person.
Yeah.
But that's a generational change. That lady has a family. All of a sudden, there may be her sons, her daughters, her brothers, her sisters, that all of a sudden are being touched by something that you said, by a helping hand that you gave. And to me, that's just something that gives me a great feel that, I will leave this earth better than I
making
found
it better. Yeah. And that is a life-changing experience for her. Having heard you on the radio, having been there and taken the action, because a lot of people will think about it and then, well, I don't know, maybe someday I'll do that. But she had the guts, the perseverance, and as a small business owner myself, I understand how much risk you take on, especially you have a family, you have a mortgage, you have kids, you have, you need to go out there, hunt, get it done, put your neck on the line, so to speak. And it's not easy, so that I have such a tremendous respect for entrepreneurs, right? Because it's a big step that they take. So
that every time that I'm doing something and I think, well, should I be doing this? I think of the story of this lady, because that day on that radio talk show, like we're having this podcast now, and there may be something that we say, something that somebody thinks about because of our conversation or references that we make that are helping someone's life. Someone's just making a decision. That lady probably was desperate at the moment, and she said, I'm going to go listen to this workshop. And at that workshop, she saw there's an opportunity for me. I can, in fact, get a loan. If I go to the Small Business Development Center at FIU, they're going to help me. They'll prepare my credit application. They will help me with a loan application. They'll give me guidance. And all that happened because of a simple radio talk show.
Right.
So it's those moments that you realize that it is worth it, that spending time helping people, it's because there's a lot of need.
There's a lot of need.
You know, we may not see it because, you know, we have a financially, I mean, we may be living in the right place. But there's a lot of need. And I see that particularly at church. And I see that when I go to Agape and I hear the stories of the ladies that are there. And there we're breaking generational curses. Because I totally believe that some of these women, they lack hope, they lack faith, and they don't really see themselves as being of value. And we give them a rebuilding that's faith-based. We give them Bible teachings. We have a chaplain, women chaplain that is there. And our goal is to break that curse.
Break that cycle.
That cycle. Because once we turn that woman around, it's not just the woman, it's the family. It's their offspring, the baby. And we have a baby and me program so that we never separate the women from their newborns. Because many of these ladies that come to us at Agape, they have been in prostitution. They have been pimped by their pimp. And when they get pregnant, all of a sudden they get cast out. So we receive them pregnant or with a recent newborn. And we don't send the newborn somewhere else. You know, the state doesn't come in. We take them both. We keep them both. We rehab her, and we take care of the baby with her. So, I mean, those programs, you know, they're just impacting. And which to me is more emotional, more fulfilling than sometimes just the beauty and the architecture that I do, which is it's a different kind of gratification. It's more of a selfish gratification. It really doesn't touch necessarily someone else other than the people that drive by and take a photo.
But that's one of the most incredible, you know, impacts that you can ever have by being here, you know. And sometimes individuals just need a hand up, not necessarily a hand out, but just a hand up. Maybe it's just listening to them, right? Having a conversation. And a lot of times, like you said, it seems commonplace to us at a certain point based on our experiences that it seems obvious. But, to them, these resources that are available, maybe they had no idea that they were available. And they could be life-changing. And so preaching about that, letting people know that, that it is available is tremendous.
I will tell you this, and I know that you'll be showing probably some of the views of some of these projects that I've done that are very beautiful. And the thing to keep in mind is these beautiful projects that I've done have allowed me the time to invest in people and in the community. And that's really where the dots are connected. Those great projects have provided the economic well-being and the ability to give me a position in the community, within my company, to allow me then to touch where the real difference is being made. Sometimes, if you're working 10 hours a day in a factory, which is nothing wrong with that, you come home tired, you don't have the opportunity to do the things that God has given me the opportunity to do. So those beautiful things that people will see in your podcast, those beautiful buildings, the Pearl in the Port of Miami, the one for Royal Caribbean, the Four Seasons Tower, all these wonderful buildings at the airport also. I mean, that allows me the time, whether it's with Agape, whether it's with church, whether it's been the foundation or the chamber, or what we're doing now with LEAF for the firefighters and the police in Coral Gables. These are the things that have allowed me the time to be able to make a difference in these areas.
Right.
Because I realized if I was doing a different kind of job or my role was different, I would not have that platform. Those buildings give me a platform, and that platform allows me to do something, because we're all a manifestation of the choices we make in life.
Absolutely.
You know,
Amen to
you can
that.
sit back and do nothing, or you can act and do something that helps the people around you. Especially people around you that you don't even know who they are. Because, you know, Jesus Christ said that there was no reward in returning love. Someone that loves you and you love them back, what's the deal? That's expected, right? The issue is when you love someone that doesn't love you back. When you love someone that they don't know you. They've never done anything for you. You're not doing as an expression of gratitude.
Right.
And that's where the tire hits the road. And to be able to be in positions that allows me to do that is precious, and it's a blessing.
And that speaks to your character. And what a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, they'll see you, they say, okay, you know, he has, you know, he can do all this because he has all this money and wealth. Well, no, because wealth just amplifies who you are. You can give your time, you can give your energy, you can give, without giving a single dollar, you can impact the lives of people, right? And so we see other people with lots of money that don't do anything, and it's just, you know, kind of hoard it to themselves. And you end up going to your grave with a lot of money. And what?
I'll give you an example now that we're here in FIU and at the School of Architecture. Very few people know this. Well, Dean Schreiner knows this. Professor Jaime Canaves knows this. But we, over the last 13 years, we have hosted one of the graduating classes in the School of Architecture at our company. And what that means is that every other week, we have a group of 15 to 18 students in Professor Canaves's architecture class, design class, coming to our office. And usually I'll have 2 or 3 of my partners or associates in the firm with me, sitting with the students, reviewing their work, giving them comments, mentoring them, talking about the business, giving them guidance. And if I was to add the hours of those 13 years, the number of students that we have touched that come through our offices, I will tell you that from that program, which, you know, it's something that we do pro bono, and it's not institutionalized. It's something that one professor here, who happens to have been a classmate of mine at Florida, we decided this is good for the students, it's good for the community.
Sure.
And we went ahead and did it. There has been a side benefit, and that is that at the end of every year, I have seen 15 to 18 students who shows up on time, who's prepared, who communicates well,
right,
who has talent, who presents well. So I don't have to interview because I know exactly who's who and who's not. So at the end of every school year, I'll tell Jaime, X, Y, and Z, Johnny, Jimmy, and Mary, I'd like to hire them.
Those.
And right now, we've hired over 40 students that have graduated from FIU. And the ones that we haven't hired benefited from the hours, endless hours, of being in our office, hearing us talk about their projects and guiding them. That's something that doesn't exist anywhere in the country, I can tell you. That does not exist. There may be visiting lectures where you get someone come in, you know, once a year, once in a blue moon, and that's it. You never see them again. In our case, they're in our office every other week throughout the school year. And that's precious and that's special.
Absolutely. So changing gears, growing up in Miami, a lot of infrastructure boom over the last 10, 20 years. What has Miami done wrong, in your opinion, in terms of the building and you know, your in planning and so forth, and what have they gotten right?
Well, I tell you, Miami has become a world-class city. I have been spending a lot of time trying to convince the company that bought my company, and they're based. We're right now close to 4,000 employees, or architects and engineers, and we have over 70 offices worldwide. We're in 5 continents, but the headquarters are located in Dayton, Ohio. Have you ever been in Dayton, Ohio?
No, but I can imagine it looks like Peoria, Illinois.
I haven't been in Dayton, Ohio either, but it's population of 500,000. And just to put it in perspective, there's not a single international flight out of Dayton, Ohio. So Miami being the gateway capital to Latin America, the fact that Miami has just mushroomed, whether it's in the high-tech, private equity, cultural facilities, sports, even though the Miami Dolphins can't get out of their own way. I think that Miami really has blossomed into, the Hong Kong of the Americas.
For sure.
I wish that at times, we had different, more enlightened leadership in different areas. I wish we would have that. I wish that our different communities would work better together. And unfortunately, they don't. There's no incentive really for one jurisdiction to necessarily work with other than personal courtesies. And I think if there was one area where I think our community has missed the boat, it's in transportation. Over a number of years, there's been the aspiration that we're going to have transit that's going to hit and serve our residents to the north, and that hasn't happened. And then we have the residents to the south, and that hasn't happened.
And the west.
And there hasn't residents to the west, and that hasn't happened. So I would say that our biggest miss, because I recall when the Metro line was built in the late 70s, is that since that time, since that era, with transportation, we really have dropped the ball in a big way in this community. And I realize we're an automotive city. We did not develop as a city like Philadelphia or Chicago or Boston or New York with the rail lines, which are more radial cities. But still, I think we have missed opportunities there, and that the planning and the leadership have frankly failed us with respect to the issue of transportation. And the second area is that I wish we would have done something better with Homestead Air Force Base. I think that's, in terms of aviation, that's an asset that is just sitting there. It is the largest land area owned by the federal government, and it's just like mothballed. And I think land is too precious to not think of that in a more grand way, whether it's for data centers, education, culture, et cetera. I think it's the one area that I think, large land area that I think has been missing. FIU has a North Campus. I think that's something that needs to be done about that. It's kind of like a stepsister to the main campus. And but I think the university working also closely better together, Miami-Dade College, FIU, and then you have, smaller private colleges in this area that I think they're working together. The higher education is everything. If our kids leave here because there are better opportunities elsewhere, or because affordability is impossible, shame on us. So making sure that we have the right transportation system, affordability, so that our young people that graduate can stay here and don't have to go to Pahokee or 2 hours north of here because they can't find housing. That's an issue that we need to resolve. And so, but other than that, I think Miami is hot. Miami has just about, I would not want to live anywhere else. Let's put it like that.
Sure.
Although I'm pretty much limited to Coral Gables. That's kind of like that's my hunting ground. That's my hub. But I really love Miami. I love the 305. And I remember the days where Miami was, murder capital of the world. It was, right after the cocaine cowboys.
Sure.
And people in the country, it was difficult to recruit. If you're trying to bring someone to come to Miami, they didn't want to come to Miami. Now it's just the opposite. Everybody in my office, the people that live in those other work in the 70 offices, they're all getting excuses to come visit with me.
Sure.
Everybody loves it here. They love our weather. They love the diversity, the fact that it's an open society. You can go to other. People don't realize this. You go to Philadelphia, and if you weren't born there, if your last name was not a particular Magilacori or something, you're out.
Yep.
Miami is open, and now maybe a little too open. I remember like in the 70s and 80s, there was more of a leadership power structure in Miami that got things done. Today that has dissipated, and it's difficult to say if you're going to get something done. Maybe a little tougher. Getting a consensus, but still, I'd rather be here than anywhere else. So, and I think people are seeing that. There was a recent article in the Herald, I think it came out yesterday, with Steve Ross, and where he and the owner of Citadel, Ken Griffey, were basically saying that
it's exploding.
Come to Miami. Miami's exploding. I think they were saying Florida has 110 billionaires living in the state. So, Miami is the city. Miami has become a world city.
Yeah. Like
New York, like San Francisco, Chicago, London. We're right up there. And maybe even better. I mean, if we get the Expo and now with the World Cup, everything's happening.
So much happening here.
Everything's happening here.
Well, Willie, thank you so much for being on. You're a game changer, not only in what the impact you've had in the physical spaces, but also the spiritual spaces as well. Thank you so much for coming on, my friend. If there's something, and there was a lot that we talked about in this episode that you need to share, because like we said, it could be one word or one sentence that could impact the lives of others and be a game changer in the lives of others. So make sure to like and subscribe and share this with somebody who needs to hear it. Willie, thank you, my friend.
Sergio, thank you very much. God
bless. See you next time.